Every city in America has its secrets, but some are buried so deeply that even the people living right next door never notice. Take Tennessee, a state known for country music, scenic mountains, and warm southern hospitality. To the average person, Tennessee is a place where families gather for Sunday dinners, farmers sell their goods at local markets, and tourists come to explore Nashville's bright lights. But in 2024, federal agents uncovered something far darker lurking beneath that wholesome image. Behind closed doors, hidden inside warehouses, storage facilities, and seemingly normal businesses, investigators discovered a criminal network worth nearly $500 million. This wasn't just any operation. It was a cartel stronghold, strategically built in the American heartland. The kind of operation you'd expect to find in border towns or international smuggling hubs, not small-town Tennessee. And yet, there it was, thriving in plain sight. The bust shocked the nation. DEA officials called it one of the largest raids in the state's history, and the numbers alone told a chilling story. Millions of dollars in seized assets, drugs destined for multiple states, vehicles outfitted with secret compartments, and evidence pointing to international ties. The question everyone wanted answered was simple. How could something so massive exist without anyone noticing? To understand this, we need to look at how cartels operate in today's world. They're not just hiding in deserts or jungles anymore. They adapt, they evolve, and most importantly, they infiltrate places where no one expects them. Tennessee, with its central location, sprawling highways, and close access to major U.S. cities, became the perfect staging ground. But this story isn't just about logistics or numbers. It's about a battle being fought in silence, right under our noses. Ordinary people going about their lives completely unaware that next door a criminal empire is laundering millions, moving contraband, and cutting deals that reach across borders. The DEA raid in Tennessee didn't just break apart a $500 million cartel operation. It exposed something bigger, that cartels are no longer distant problems happening somewhere else. They're here, embedded in local communities. And if this one could go unnoticed for so long, how many others are still out there? Tonight, we're pulling back the curtain on this extraordinary story. In this video, you'll learn how investigators first caught wind of this cartel's presence, the high-stakes surveillance that led to the raid, what was discovered inside those warehouses, and why this bust matters not just for Tennessee, but for every American city. Because here's the truth. When you see a number like $500 million, you're not just talking about money. You're talking about lives destroyed, communities exploited, and international power struggles spilling directly into U.S. neighborhoods. And that's why this story matters. Because understanding how it happened might just be the only way to stop it from happening again. So buckle up. This isn't a Hollywood movie. This isn't Netflix fiction. This is real life. This is the story of the $500 million Tennessee cartel operation and the DEA raid that shook an entire state. To understand the magnitude of Tennessee's $500 million cartel operation, we need to step inside the mechanics of how it functioned. Unlike the violent Hollywood portrayals of cartels, this network didn't rely on shootouts in the streets or flashy displays of power. Instead, it was built on stealth, precision, and deception. At the heart of the operation were a series of front businesses, trucking companies, auto repair shops, and even small convenience stores that looked perfectly ordinary to the casual customer. These businesses served as cover identities, blending in seamlessly with the fabric of local life. To neighbors, they were family-owned shops providing services to the community. To the cartel, they were hubs for laundering millions of dollars and moving illicit shipments. Investigators later revealed that cartel couriers used tractor-trailers outfitted with hidden compartments to move product across multiple states. The brilliance of this system was its invisibility. Thousands of trucks roll down Tennessee highways every single day. To pick out the one that's carrying a hidden fortune is like finding a needle in a haystack. Money was laundered with equal sophistication. Proceeds from the operation were filtered through small businesses, then layered into shell companies that stretched across state lines and even into offshore accounts. By the time the money reached cartel leaders, it was nearly impossible to trace back to Tennessee. And here's where the scale becomes jaw-dropping. According to seized records, the Tennessee network was moving hundreds of pounds of narcotics each month, generating nearly $40 million per quarter. That means in a single year, one state's hidden operation was fueling a multi-billion-dollar empire, What made this particular bust historic wasn't just the size of the money trail, it was the geography. Tennessee is not on the U.S.-Mexico border, where these stories are often expected. Instead, it sits at the crossroads of America. Highways like I-40 and I-65 connect it directly to major hubs: Atlanta, Chicago, Dallas, and beyond. For the cartel, Tennessee wasn't just a hiding spot. It was a distribution center, a launch pad to the rest of the United States. For years, locals saw nothing unusual. Trucks came and went, businesses opened and closed, money flowed in and out. It wasn't until the DEA partnered with state authorities to cross-reference financial anomalies, like a convenience store moving more money than a luxury retailer, that the first cracks appeared. Once the investigation began, patterns started to emerge. Surveillance caught vehicles making unexplained late-night deliveries. Informants tipped agents off to coded conversations about shipments and deliveries. Slowly but surely, the picture came together. But here's the most startling revelation. This Tennessee cartel branch wasn't acting alone. Evidence pointed to connections with larger international syndicates, linking directly back to operations in Central and South America. That meant the small-town businesses and warehouses weren't just hiding local crime. They were nodes in a global supply chain. Comparisons to past busts highlight why this was so critical. In 2014, authorities in Chicago intercepted a major cartel shipment worth $100 million. In 2019, New Jersey saw a bust valued at $200 million. But Tennessee's $500 million case dwarfed them all, not just in numbers, but in the realization that cartels no longer need major coastal cities to thrive. They can set up shop anywhere, provided there's access to highways, money laundering options, and communities willing or oblivious enough to look the other way. By the time the raid was executed, agents discovered not just narcotics, but an elaborate paper trail of fake invoices, coded ledgers, and offshore transfers. In other words, this wasn't a random stash house. This was a corporate-style enterprise, complete with accounting systems, logistics managers, and regional coordinators. And that's what makes the Tennessee case so unsettling. It showed how organized crime has evolved. Cartels no longer look like shadowy figures hiding in the jungle. They look like business owners, truck drivers, landlords, and neighbors. They've blended into the very fabric of American society, operating under the radar until someone brave or lucky stumbles onto the truth. This raises a chilling question. If Tennessee could harbor a $500 million operation without detection for years, how many more are still hidden across the country? Imagine for a moment that the DEA hadn't caught this operation. That $500 million Tennessee network would still be humming quietly in the background, fueling addiction, violence, and corruption across the nation. The first consequence would have been community decay. Small towns that appeared peaceful on the surface would slowly drown in rising addiction rates. Families already struggling would be torn apart by overdoses. Emergency rooms would see more cases. Police departments would face higher crime waves, and schools would feel the ripple effects as children grew up in unstable homes. But the devastation wouldn't stay local. Tennessee's position as a central hub meant the drugs weren't destined just for local neighborhoods. They were being distributed nationwide. Every month the operation continued, tens of thousands of doses were slipping onto American streets from Chicago to Miami, from Dallas to New York. The human toll of just 1 year of uninterrupted cartel activity could have been catastrophic. Beyond addiction, there's the financial corruption. With $500 million in circulation, cartel money seeps into legitimate economies. Think of property values rising because cartel buyers launder money through real estate. Think of small businesses struggling to compete against cartel-funded fronts. Over time, entire towns risk becoming economically dependent on dirty money. And then there's the hidden hand of power. With such vast sums, cartels can buy influence. Local officials, law enforcement officers, even politicians become targets of bribery. The Tennessee bust wasn't just about stopping drugs. It was about preventing a slow rot of democracy itself. Now let's flip it. Because the bust happened, Tennessee avoided becoming a permanent cartel stronghold. Law enforcement sent a loud message. Even in quiet heartland states, cartels are not invisible. The raid not only dismantled one operation, it forced cartels nationwide to rethink their strategies. This case also changed how the DEA operates. Instead of focusing solely on border states or coastal cities, they began widening their lens to look at Middle America. They started analyzing financial records more deeply, watching for anomalies in businesses that looked too successful for their size. It marked a shift from chasing drugs to chasing dollars, following the money trail until it cracked open the operation. And perhaps most importantly, the Tennessee bust shattered the myth that cartels are someone else's problem. For decades, the narrative was that these organizations existed far away, across the border in distant cities. But now it became clear they could be hiding in plain sight, even in your neighborhood. The broader ripple effects are profound. Every bust of this scale temporarily destabilizes cartel supply chains. Prices fluctuate, rival factions clash for control, and violence often spikes abroad. What happened in Tennessee didn't just protect American lives, it disrupted international cartel logistics, creating ripple effects from Mexico to Colombia. But here's the haunting reality. Busts like this are victories, but they are never final. For every operation dismantled, another is already rising. Cartels operate like corporations. They adapt, restructure, and innovate. The Tennessee case bought time, saved lives, and exposed vulnerabilities, but the war is far from over. So the question that lingers is this: how many more Tennessee-style operations are quietly running today, waiting to be discovered? And will law enforcement find them before the damage is irreversible? As we close the chapter on the Tennessee bust, let's step back and ask, what does this case really mean? On the surface, it looks like just another raid, another headline about law enforcement seizing millions, another cartel branch exposed, but the truth runs much deeper. This $500 million operation was a mirror, showing us how close organized crime has crept into the daily lives of ordinary Americans. It showed us that cartels don't just exist across borders, in faraway cities, or in shadowy movie scripts. They can root themselves in small-town Tennessee, in neighborhoods that look no different from yours or mine. That's perhaps the most chilling part, the ordinariness of it all. This bust proves something else. Cartels thrive where people aren't looking. They count on our assumptions. They assume that if the town looks quiet, no one will suspect anything. They assume that local businesses won't be questioned. They assume that Americans won't believe their reach extends this far inland. And for a time, they were right. But here's the victory. When the DEA struck, those assumptions shattered. The raid wasn't just about confiscating drugs or seizing $500 million. It was about tearing back the curtain and saying, "We see you, and we are not looking away." The broader lesson: follow the money. Drugs are the product, but money is the lifeblood. Every cartel adapts, but the trail of cash is harder to erase. And when $500 million starts circulating in a quiet state economy, it leaves footprints too large to hide. Yet even in this moment of triumph, the story carries a sobering reminder. For every bust, another operation rises. For every supply chain disrupted, another is rebuilt. This isn't a battle with a clear finish line. It's a constant push and pull between innovation and resistance, between criminal networks and the institutions sworn to stop them. But victories matter. Each bust buys time. Each raid saves lives. Each disruption sends a shockwave through cartel infrastructure, forcing them to start over, costing them resources they can't easily replace. And then there's the question for us, the viewers, the citizens, the ones watching from the outside. What role do we play in this story? Because the truth is, these networks survive on silence. They rely on people turning their heads, assuming it's not their problem. The Tennessee bust is proof that it is our problem. Addiction, corruption, money laundering, and violence, all of it seeps into communities whether we see it or not. So maybe the lesson is vigilance. Pay attention to what looks too good to be true. Speak up when you see things that don't add up. Understand that crime doesn't always wear a mask or carry a gun. It often wears a suit, drives a nice car, and lives next door. As we leave this story, remember, the Tennessee bust wasn't just a battle between the DEA and cartels. It was a reminder that these struggles define the hidden currents of our world. They shape politics, economies, and the safety of our families in ways we rarely think about. And maybe the most haunting question remains: if one operation worth $500 million was uncovered in Tennessee, how many more are still hidden in plain sight? Let us know what you think in the comments. Could this case signal the turning point in America's fight against cartels? Or is it just one skirmish in a war that has no end? If you found this investigation eye-opening, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs to know this story, and subscribe for more hidden truths from the world's most secret battles. This is more than news. This is about power, survival, and the fight for control of our communities. And as always, the story doesn't end here. It continues right outside your door. When the dust settled after the DEA's $500 million Tennessee bust, one burning question remained. How do we stop this from happening again? The raid proved the cartel's reach, power, and resourcefulness, but it also exposed cracks in America's defense against organized crime. This section isn't just about what happened. It's about the responses, solutions, and theories that law enforcement, communities, and even critics are putting forward to prevent history from repeating itself. First, the DEA doubled down on intelligence-led policing. The Tennessee operation wasn't luck. It was the result of months of wiretaps, undercover operations, and surveillance. Agents argue that the key to staying ahead of cartels is data. Patterns in bank records, sudden property purchases, or encrypted communications often tell the story before a single shipment crosses the border. The theory is simple. Cartels thrive in secrecy, but transparency kills them. The more financial and communication trails investigators can monitor, the harder it becomes for cartels to hide billion-dollar empires behind front businesses. But intelligence alone isn't enough. Another solution discussed widely is community integration. Cartels often exploit vulnerable areas, rural towns, struggling neighborhoods, and places where jobs are scarce. Tennessee was no exception. Cartel networks recruited locals who knew the back roads, the storage facilities, the blind spots. By investing in community programs, creating jobs, and strengthening ties between citizens and law enforcement, the DEA hopes to cut off the roots cartels use to grow in American soil. It's not just about raids, it's about prevention. Then there's the international angle. Cartels are not confined by state lines or even national borders. The drugs in Tennessee may have originated thousands of miles away in Mexico, Colombia, or beyond. That means international cooperation is critical. Joint task forces between the U.S., Mexico, and Central America are increasingly sharing intelligence. Some critics, however, argue that corruption in foreign governments makes these partnerships unreliable. Others say without tackling the global supply chain, the U.S. will forever be playing defense, bust after bust, while the cartels keep growing. And this raises the most controversial theory: legalization and regulation. Some policy experts argue that the only way to truly strip cartels of power is to cut off demand by legalizing certain drugs and regulating them. They point to alcohol prohibition in the 1920s, when organized crime thrived until prohibition ended. By bringing substances into a regulated system, cartels lose their monopoly. Critics, of course, warn that legalization could create new health crises, fueling addiction and societal costs. It's a debate that has raged for decades and shows no signs of fading. Another solution comes directly from technology: AI and predictive policing. Using algorithms to scan data, law enforcement can identify likely cartel routes, stash houses, or even predict spikes in drug flow weeks in advance. The promise is enormous, but so are the ethical concerns. How much surveillance is too much? Do we risk civil liberties in the name of safety? Still, agencies believe predictive models will be key in the next decade. Finally, there is the human factor, protecting the agents and communities on the front lines. After the Tennessee bust, cartel retaliation fears were real. Theories on better response include stronger witness protection, better funding for DEA agents, and closer cooperation with local police departments. Because cartels don't just move drugs, they move fear. Breaking that cycle requires protecting those who dare to resist. So between intelligence-driven policing, community engagement, international cooperation, technological innovation, and even controversial debates about legalization, the war against cartels is as complex as ever. The Tennessee bust wasn't the end of the story. It was the opening chapter of a new fight, And perhaps the biggest theory of all, that the cartels are already adapting. Even as the DEA celebrates its win, you can bet cartel leaders are holding meetings right now, asking, what's our next move? The battle isn't over, it has only shifted, and the solutions must shift with it. As we come to the end of this story, let's pause and reflect on what the Tennessee bust really means. On paper, it was a massive victory. $500 million worth of drugs, weapons, and cartel assets taken off the streets. The DEA called it one of the largest seizures in the region's history. Headlines celebrated the operation, and communities in Tennessee felt a temporary sigh of relief. But behind the numbers, the reality is far more complex, because the war is not over, and this bust was just one chapter in a long, ongoing battle. The Tennessee case proves two things at once: that law enforcement is capable of incredible wins when intelligence, timing, and courage align, and that cartels remain deeply entrenched, constantly adapting, and willing to exploit every weakness. That's the paradox. Every raid shows success, but every raid also reminds us of the scale of the problem. Let's recap the key points. We started with the shocking discovery: a $500 million cartel pipeline hidden in plain sight in rural Tennessee. Then we explored how investigators pieced together the clues: wiretaps, surveillance, undercover operations, until they were ready to strike. We dived into the logistics: how cartels infiltrate small communities, how they move massive shipments across borders, and how violence and intimidation keep their networks running. Then we asked the big question: what happens next? We examined solutions, from international cooperation to AI-driven surveillance, community engagement, and even controversial debates about legalization. But here's the deeper truth: the cartels will not stop. They are businesses, ruthless and highly motivated. They will reroute, recruit, rebuild, and return. For every warehouse shut down, another is already being planned. For every leader arrested, another waits in line. It's a cycle that raises haunting questions. Can we ever truly win? Or are we locked in an endless struggle? And yet there is hope. History shows that resilience, persistence, and adaptation can win battles once thought impossible. The DEA has dismantled networks before. Communities have risen against corruption before. Technology has shifted balances of power before. Every bust, no matter how temporary it feels, saves lives. Because fewer drugs on the streets means fewer overdoses, fewer ruined families, fewer funerals. Each victory is worth celebrating, even if the war is not yet won. But perhaps the most important part of this story isn't the DEA or the cartels. It's you, the viewer, the citizen, the community member. Awareness is power. When people understand how cartels operate, how they infiltrate, how they profit, they can push for smarter laws, stronger protections, and better solutions. Staying informed isn't just entertainment, it's a form of defense. So here's the challenge I leave you with. What do you think the best solution is? Should governments double down on intelligence and enforcement? Should communities push for prevention and education? Should leaders explore controversial options like legalization? Or should technology, AI, predictive policing, and international cooperation take center stage? This isn't just a story about Tennessee. It's a story about all of us, because cartels don't stop at borders and their reach is global. If you've made it this far into the video, you're exactly the kind of person who thinks deeply, questions narratives, and looks for the truth beneath the headlines. And that's why I need your help. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on how we win this war. Your voice matters, and your opinion could inspire others. And if you want more deep dives like this, investigations into the hidden battles, the high-stakes operations, and the global mysteries that shape our world, then don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you never miss the next story. Because in a world where headlines come and go, context and truth are the only things that last. Thank you for watching, and until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and never stop exploring the hidden realms of the world around us.